Christmas Eve has always been my favorite night of the year. The smell of cinnamon candles, the faint crackle of firewood, and the low hum of carols playing from Grandpa's old record player always felt like home. Ever since I was little, Grandpa's house had been the center of every holiday. It stood on a quiet street in Maplewood, wrapped in 1,000 golden lights like a star fallen to earth. That year, the snow came early. I remember brushing flakes off my coat as I walked up the icy porch steps, balancing a tray of cookies and a bottle of red wine. I hadn't seen my family in months, not since I moved into my tiny apartment downtown. I was 28, barely keeping myself afloat after quitting my job to start a small design business. I told everyone it was going great, though truthfully I was still living paycheck to paycheck. When Grandpa opened the door, his face lit up like it always did. "My little miracle," he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of peppermint and pipe tobacco. "You're freezing! Get in here before you turn into a snowflake!" Inside, the house was alive. Laughter echoing from the kitchen, the smell of roast turkey drifting through the hall. My father, Richard, stood near the fireplace, chatting with my uncle. He looked perfectly at ease in his pressed shirt and shiny watch. My mother, Margaret, was busy arranging gifts under the tree, humming softly. For a few hours, everything felt right. We ate, we toasted, we shared stories. Grandpa sat at the head of the long oak table, the centerpiece glowing with candles and holly. He'd been quieter lately, a little frailer since Grandma passed last year. But tonight he looked happy, truly happy. When dinner plates were cleared, Grandpa raised his glass. "To family," he said, his voice steady but warm. "To the ones who've made me proud and kept me young." We all clinked glasses. I smiled, sipping my wine, feeling that fragile peace I always chased. Then he turned to me. "So, Amelia," he said with that familiar twinkle in his eyes, "are you enjoying the $480,000 house I got you?" The room went still. I laughed awkwardly, thinking he was joking. "What house, Grandpa?" He chuckled. "At first. The one I paid for last spring. Your father said you'd fallen in love with it. The white one on Maple Avenue. I wired the money directly to the seller." "Don't tell me you've already sold it." My smile faded. "Grandpa, I don't have a house." Silence. The air shifted, heavy and cold. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's hand tightened around his glass, his face draining of color. "What do you mean?" Grandpa frowned. "Richard, you said," my father cut in, his voice unsteady. "Dad, there's been some misunderstanding." Grandpa's eyes narrowed. "A misunderstanding? You told me Amelia was struggling, that she couldn't afford a mortgage, so I gave you the money to help her. You sent me a picture of her in front of the house." My stomach dropped. I turned to my father. "What is he talking about?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His lips trembled. "Amelia, It's complicated." "No," Grandpa snapped, slamming his hand against the table. "It's simple. Did you or did you not buy that house for her?" The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. The warmth of the fire suddenly felt suffocating. "I'll explain later," my father muttered, looking down at his plate. "Explain now," Grandpa demanded, his voice trembling with fury. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you stole nearly $500,000 meant for your daughter." My breath hitched. I felt my pulse in my throat, my chest. I looked at my mother, but she sat frozen, her eyes glassy as if she'd known, or at least suspected, something for a while. "Dad," I whispered, my voice breaking, "please tell me this isn't true." He looked at me then, and that look told me everything. It wasn't anger, it wasn't guilt, it was defeat. "I needed the money," he said quietly, "just for a while. Things were bad then. I had debts. You used my name," I said, realization hitting like a knife. "You told him it was for me." He looked away. Grandpa pushed his chair back, trembling. "You forged papers in your own daughter's name. Richard, how could you?" The room erupted, my mother crying, my uncle cursing under his breath, my father trying to defend himself. But every word he spoke only made it worse. I sat there in silence, staring at the reflection of the Christmas tree lights in my untouched glass of wine. That was the night everything shattered. The night the golden warmth of family turned to glass shards underfoot. The night my father became a stranger. When I finally stood up to leave, Grandpa took my hand, his eyes full of sorrow. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he whispered. "I trusted the wrong person. I didn't have words. I just nodded and walked out into the snow. The cold bit at my cheeks, but I didn't feel it. Behind me, The house that once felt like home now glowed like a lie. Beautiful on the outside, hollow within. That Christmas Eve, I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes wrapped in family love, hidden beneath ribbons and lights. The morning after Christmas felt colder than the night before. Though the fire in Grandpa's hearth had burned all night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face. That look of guilt, that trembling voice trying to excuse the unforgivable. I woke up in my old bedroom, the one with faded floral wallpaper and photographs of my childhood pinned above the desk. For a few seconds, I could almost pretend nothing had happened. But downstairs, the muffled voices shattered the illusion. Grandpa and Dad were arguing, and their words carried through the walls. "You lied to me, Richard," Grandpa's voice cracked. "You took the money I set aside for Amelia, her future, and you spent it on yourself." "I didn't spend it," Dad hissed. "I just borrowed it. I was going to pay it back." "With what? Lies and promises?" Grandpa's tone was sharp, filled with disbelief. "You showed me photos, fake documents. You made me believe you'd helped her." I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears welling up. My father had gone that far? Forged papers? When I walked downstairs, both men stopped. My grandfather stood tall despite his age, his silver hair glinting in the sunlight pouring through the window. My father, however, looked like a shadow of himself. Rumpled shirt, eyes hollow. "Amelia," Grandpa said softly, "you deserve to hear the truth." I crossed my arms, staring at my father. "Go on, tell me everything." He sighed, looking anywhere but at me. 3 years ago, I had business debts. A deal went wrong. I owed people money. When Dad offered to help, I told him it was for you, that you wanted to buy a home. I thought I could use the money, fix things, and pay him back before anyone noticed. "Fix things?" My voice shook. "You forged legal documents in my name. You faked a property purchase." He flinched. "I had no choice." "You always had a choice," I said bitterly. "You just never chose me." My mother walked in then, her face pale. "Richard," she whispered, "how could you do this? To your own child?" He turned to her helplessly. "You think I wanted to?" "You don't understand, Margaret. They were going to ruin me." "Then maybe you should have let them," Grandpa snapped. "At least you'd have had your integrity." The silence that followed felt endless. My father looked at each of us, but none of us could meet his eyes anymore. He finally left, slamming the front door so hard the ornaments on the mantel trembled. For days afterward, the house was wrapped in tension. Grandpa barely spoke. My mother wandered around like a ghost. I felt hollow. The word family no longer meant warmth or safety. It meant betrayal, lies, and stolen trust. A week later, Grandpa called me into his study. The old mahogany desk was covered in papers, bank statements, receipts, transfers. "I had my lawyer trace where the money went," he said quietly. "It didn't go to a house." I swallowed. "Then where?" His eyes softened with sorrow. "Half was used to pay off your father's business loans. The rest went to a woman named Elena Brooks." My heart stopped. "Who is that?" Grandpa hesitated, then handed me a printed bank statement. The note beside one of the transfers read, "Private loan, EB, she's not a business associate," Grandpa said grimly. "She's his mistress." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I felt the air leave my lungs, the ground tilt beneath me. My father hadn't just stolen money meant for me. He'd used it to fund a secret life. "He betrayed Mom too," I whispered. Grandpa reached across the desk and held my hand. "I'm sorry, Amelia." I should have seen the signs sooner. I couldn't even cry at first. I just stared at the floor, numb, as the truth settled over me like ash. Every memory, every smile, every hug from my father now felt poisoned. In the days that followed, the family fell apart piece by piece. My mother moved in with her sister. Grandpa cut ties with my father entirely. He told his lawyer to report the forgery and initiate legal action, though he stopped short of pressing criminal charges because he didn't want to destroy him completely. As for me, I tried to pick up the fragments of a life that no longer made sense. My father's betrayal had stolen more than money. It had taken away my trust in him, in family, in love. People say heartbreak comes from lovers, but they're wrong. The deepest kind of heartbreak comes when your parent chooses greed over you. I went back to my small apartment in the city, where silence greeted me like an old friend. The lights of passing cars streaked across the wall, and I sat there, staring out the window, trying to feel anything but broken. One night, Grandpa called. His voice was weak but steady. "Amelia, promise me something," he said. "Anything. Don't let his sins ruin your faith in good people. Not everyone lies. Not everyone steals." I swallowed hard. "I'll try, Grandpa," he sighed softly. "That's all I ask." When the call ended, I cried for the first time since Christmas Eve. Long, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. I wasn't just mourning what he'd done. I was mourning the illusion I'd lived in. I didn't know it then, but that night was the start of something new. A quiet rage began to bloom inside me, not the kind that seeks destruction, but the kind that seeks redemption. And in the years to come, that rage would become my fire. The web of betrayal had been spun, but I was done being caught in it. Time is a strange thing. It doesn't heal, not really. It just stretches the pain until it fits inside your chest more neatly. The months after that, Christmas blurred together. The snow melted, the trees bloomed, and still, I woke up some mornings half expecting my phone to buzz with a message from Dad. An apology, an explanation, something. But it never came. He disappeared. No visits, no calls, not even a half-hearted text to ask how I was doing. It was as if he'd fallen off the face of the earth, or maybe he just didn't want to face the wreckage he'd created. I threw myself into work. My small design business, which had been struggling before, suddenly became my lifeline. I spent sleepless nights drafting, painting, and answering clients' emails. I poured every ounce of anger and heartbreak into what I created. And strangely, it started working. People began to notice my art, the raw emotion, the honesty in it. My first big client was a local bakery owner who saw my mural sketches online. Then came a boutique hotel, then a cafe chain that wanted my designs for their interiors. Within a year, I wasn't surviving. I was thriving. Every cent I earned felt like a declaration: you took what was mine, but I'm building something you can't steal. Grandpa was my biggest supporter through it all. Though age had slowed him, his spirit hadn't dimmed. We spoke often, sometimes about business, sometimes about nothing at all. He once told me over tea, "You've turned pain into purpose, Amelia. Not everyone can do that." I smiled, though a part of me still ached. "I just don't want to be like him." "You won't," he said firmly. "You know what loss feels like. That alone sets you apart." But even as life improved, there was an emptiness that never left. Every success carried a quiet whisper: "Your father should have been proud of you." Instead, he was a ghost haunting my victories. 2 years later, Grandpa passed away peacefully in his sleep. I remember the call vividly, my mother's trembling voice, the way the world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. The funeral was small but beautiful. I stood beside his grave, surrounded by people whose lives he had touched. The wind was cold that day, but the sky was impossibly blue. After everyone left, I stayed behind. I knelt, tracing my fingers over his name engraved in the marble. "Thank you," I whispered, "for believing in me even when everything else fell apart." I didn't notice at first, but my father had come too, standing at a distance, his suit wrinkled, his eyes sunken. When our gazes met, I felt nothing. No rage, no sadness, just a quiet detachment. He took a hesitant step forward. "Amelia, can we talk?" I shook my head. "Not here." He looked down, shame flickering in his expression. "I know you hate me." "I don't hate you," I interrupted. "I just don't know who you are anymore." He nodded slowly. "I'm trying to change." "Good," I said softly. "But that's your burden, not mine," and I walked away, leaving him standing alone among the graves. In the months that followed, my business flourished even more. I hired 2 employees, moved into a larger studio, and for the first time allowed myself to breathe without the weight of the past pressing on my shoulders. Mom began to heal too. She moved back into her own place, started teaching again, and even laughed sometimes. We never spoke much about Dad, though I could see in her eyes that the wound was still there, even if it had scabbed over. Sometimes healing doesn't mean forgiveness. It just means choosing peace over chaos. 3 years after that dreadful Christmas, I finally bought a house. Not the one Grandpa had believed he'd given me. No, this one was entirely mine. It wasn't grand or expensive, but it was perfect in all the ways that mattered. White walls, wooden floors, sunlight streaming through every window. I remember standing in the living room the first night after moving in. My furniture still half unpacked, the air smelling faintly of fresh paint. I ran my hands along the wall and whispered, "I did it, Grandpa," and for a moment I could almost feel his hand on my shoulder. But peace has a funny way of being temporary. One rainy evening as I was closing up the studio, I saw him again, my father, standing outside under a broken umbrella, soaked through and trembling. He looked older, smaller somehow. The arrogance that once surrounded him like armor was gone. "Amelia," he said softly, "please, I didn't know where else to go. I froze. Why are you here?" He looked down. "I lost everything. The business, the house, even Elena, she left years ago. I have nothing left. I should have felt satisfaction, poetic justice maybe. But instead, I just felt a strange, heavy pity. I'm not here for money," he added quickly. I wanted to see you, to tell you I'm sorry." The words hung between us, fragile and trembling. For a long moment I didn't respond. Then I simply said, "You should go home." He gave a bitter smile. "I don't have one." And as he turned to leave, I realized the truth. For the first time, he looked truly broken. And I had never been stronger. That night, as the rain pattered against the window of my new home, I thought of Grandpa again. His voice echoed in my mind. "Don't let his sins ruin your faith in good people." I didn't know what fate had in store, but I felt a shift inside me. Not revenge yet, but something close. Because I knew, deep down, that Christmas was coming again. And sometimes, the past has a way of knocking twice. Christmas Eve, 4 years after the night my world shattered. Snow blanketed the town again, soft and silent, as if time had circled back to give me a second chance. My new house glowed with warm light and laughter. Friends from work gathered around the tree, mugs of cocoa in hand, exchanging stories and gifts. There was music, gentle and low, and the faint scent of pine and sugar cookies. I'd built a life, a good one. And yet, a small part of me still remembered that night. The look on Grandpa's face, the shame in my father's eyes, the way something innocent in me had died right there at the table. But tonight wasn't about grief, it was about closure. Around 8 o'clock the doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone else. When I opened the door, the cold wind rushed in, and with it, a ghost. My father stood there, wrapped in a worn-out coat, his hair flecked with snow, eyes hollow but searching. He held a small, wrapped box in his trembling hands. "Amelia," he said quietly. I wasn't sure you'd open the door. I didn't say anything. For a moment we just stood there, two people bound by blood and regret. Behind me, laughter drifted from the living room, the sound of a life I'd built without him. "Can I come in? Just for a minute?" he asked. I hesitated. Then slowly I stepped aside. He walked in, his eyes scanning the home, the soft lights, the paintings on the walls, the polished wood floors. It was warm, inviting, full of life. I saw something flicker in his eyes, pride maybe, or maybe just the realization of everything he'd lost. "This is beautiful," he murmured. "You've done well for yourself." "I have," I said evenly. "Without anyone's help." He nodded, the words hitting harder than I'd intended. "I know, I've been keeping up with your work online. You're doing incredible things." "Why are you here, Dad?" He took a shaky breath. "It's Christmas, and I needed to see you. I've been living with guilt for years. I know I can't undo what I did, but stop." I raised a hand. "You've said you're sorry before." He looked down. "This isn't about saying sorry. It's about asking if there's anything left in your heart for me, even just a sliver." I studied him. The man before me wasn't the confident, charismatic father I once admired. He looked smaller, worn by the weight of his own choices. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "But I don't know you anymore. The person I loved, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who read me bedtime stories. He died the night you chose greed over family." He winced, tears brimming in his eyes. I deserved that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The Christmas tree lights twinkled gently, casting patterns across the room. Then I said something I hadn't planned to. "Do you remember what Grandpa said to me that night?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "On Christmas Eve, at dinner, he asked me if I was enjoying the $480,000 house he bought for me." His face paled. "Amelia..." I smiled faintly, not with bitterness, but calm resolve. "Well, tonight I'll ask you something similar." I gestured around the room, the house that I had bought, every brick earned through sleepless nights and tears he'd never seen. "You enjoying the warmth of the house I bought myself?" The words hung in the air, heavy, familiar, poetic. The echo of Grandpa's question had finally come full circle. He looked around slowly, realizing what I'd done, not out of revenge but out of strength. His lips trembled. "You sound just like him," he whispered. "I hope so," I said quietly. "Because he was a good man. He believed in redemption, but he also believed in consequences." Tears slid down his cheeks. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No," I said softly, "you don't. But I hope one day you can forgive yourself." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "Can I leave this?" He held out the small gift box. I hesitated, then took it. "What is it?" "Just open it later," he said. "Please." He turned toward the door, pausing once more before stepping out into the cold. "Merry Christmas, Amelia." "Merry Christmas, Dad." The door clicked shut behind him, and for the first time I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, I sat by the fire and unwrapped the gift. Inside was a small wooden frame, a photo of Grandpa and me when I was little, sitting on his porch swing, both of us laughing. Behind the photo, on the back of the frame, was a note in my father's handwriting. "I know I can't give back what I took, but I can honor what you became. Grandpa would be proud. I am too." I pressed the frame to my chest, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Not from pain this time, but from release. The snow outside kept falling, blanketing the world in white. I looked toward the window, whispering into the quiet, "You were right, Grandpa. Some gifts can't be stolen, only earned." And with that, I smiled. Because for the first time in years, Christmas didn't hurt anymore. It healed.